the Haight Ashbury in the 60s. This is a history, a time capsule, and a game, all rolled into one. Now you can skip this wrap by clicking on it. Turn On is a history of the Haight, told with images, music, art, and poetry of the 60s, written and narrated by Alan Cohen. Tune In is a reference section. You can look up topics, watch music videos, check out the Oracle, or even roll your own version of the Turn On show. Drop Out is a cool game. The goal is to find enlightenment. And of course, this is The Rise and Fall of the Haight Ashbury by Alan Cohen. Alan was the editor of the San Francisco Oracle, the first underground psychedelic newspaper, and one of the organizers of the Be-In. This is his story of the 60s. You can kick back and watch the show run, or you can watch one scene at a time at your own pace. You can move forward or backward in time, or you can click on things for tangents. And if you need help, there's a help button in that corner. To start the show, just click on me.
I'm Rachel Donahue, and I arrived in San Francisco in February of 1964, just as the Haight Ashbury began to morph from beatnik to hippie, a transformation that went unnoticed by the establishment. From 1964 to 1968, there swelled a gigantic wave of cultural and political change that swept first the city, then the whole United States, and then the world. In the 60s, the Haight was a working-class neighborhood, much as it is now, but back then rents were cheap. You could get 6 rooms in an apartment for about $120. Needless to say, this drew students from San Francisco State, and cooperative living became commonplace. This was the new Bohemia. By 1965, art and music were changing rapidly, and as if summoned by some form of silent communication, musicians from all over the West Coast were gravitating to the Bay Area. Tom Donahue, who would later start the first FM rock station, KMPX, in San Francisco, remarked to me as we approached the first Longshoremen's Hall show, "It's like somebody lifted up a giant flat rock and we all crawled out at the same time." It was a time of major upheaval in the pop music world, although not everyone was prepared to accept it. Bob Dylan was booed off the stage at the Newport Folk Festival when he played an electric guitar. The times, they were a-changin'. Tom Donahue and I, with his partner Bob Mitchell, produced the last live Beatles concert at San Francisco's Candlestick Park in August of 1966. In '65, we had put on a show at the Civic Auditorium with the Rolling Stones, the Byrds, Paul Revere and the Raiders, and some other acts, and we didn't sell out. Something was definitely up. The Bay Area music scene was far from dead, though. It was alive and well and thriving in Palo Alto, at Ken Kesey's house in La Honda, at the 1090 Page Street Collective in the Haight, and at the Matrix nightclub and Keystone Corners in San Francisco. The Grateful Dead, known first as the Emergency Crew and then the Warlocks, began playing their peculiar blend of folk, blues, and bluegrass that would evolve into a whole new kind of rock and roll. They became the unofficial house band of Kesey's parties in La Honda. In the summer of '65, one of the original psychedelic rock bands, the Charlatans, became the house band for the Red Dog Saloon in Virginia City, Nevada, under the benevolent wing of Chandler Laughlin, who would later become the radio personality Travis T. Hipp. The Charlatans projected an image unlike anything anybody had seen. With their Edwardian get-ups and long hair, they looked totally comfortable playing in saloons while wearing gun belts. Many would later strive for this effect, but nobody could do it like the Charlatans. Meanwhile, the Jefferson Airplane with Signe Anderson and Marty Ballin were playing a mixture of folk and rock at the Matrix. But it wasn't until Signe was replaced by Grace Slick that the Airplane became the first from the scene to make a hit record. On the business side of the scene were promoters Chet Helms and Bill Graham, two very different men involved in the same business, each of them working to bring out this new mixture of music which came to be known as San Francisco psychedelic rock. In late 1965, Bill Graham produced an appeal party for the defense of the radical theater group, the San Francisco Mime Troupe. They'd been busted for the crime of performing in the park for free without a permit. The Airplane, the Mystery Trend, and the Fugs rocked the Mime Troupe loft all night long. The seed was planted, and Bill Graham Presents was on its way to rock and roll history. Meanwhile, Ken Kesey and his merry pranksters were staging their own kind of event, the Trips Festival, complete with free refreshments, LSD-laced Kool-Aid, and of course, the good old Grateful Dead.
Escaping through the lily fields, I came across an empty space.
Chet Helms, who had been putting on dance parties in the basement of 1090 Page Street, now joined up with the family dog. The dog had already produced shows at the Longshoremen's Hall, including a tribute to Dr. Strange with The Airplane, The Charlatans, and The Great Society with Grace Slick. By 1966, the family dog was producing shows in the Avalon Ballroom in a different style than the Fillmore Auditorium. Chet didn't like Graham's style, and Bill in turn said that he'd be more successful because he was from New York and he got up early in the morning. Ah, and then there were the light shows. Artist Bill Ham was developing his liquid projection light shows in his house a few blocks from the Family Dog Collective, and he started playing them at the Red Dog Saloon. Light show artists were an integral part of the psychedelic rock scene. They provided a pulsating environment of vibrating colors, an acid trip from which you could come down by merely leaving the room. And of course, there were the posters. Probably the first rock poster was drawn by George Hunter and Mike Ferguson of the Charlatans for their shows at the Red Dog Saloon. Wes Wilson was both a talented artist and a professional printer, so he drew from turn-of-the-century Art Nouveau and early Art Deco in developing many of the motifs of the early posters. Alton Kelly, Stanley Mouse, Victor Moscoso, and Rick Griffin each imprinted his own distinctive style on Family Dog posters, and their work raised the poster from a form of communication to a pinnacle of 20th century art. In 1967, Tom Donahue decided to create an electronic outlet for this new music that was being played everywhere except on the radio. So with a handful of our hip friends who all brought their records, we started KMPX-FM in a warehouse on the San Francisco waterfront. Now the music was spreading beyond the city. While the Haight became known as the Center for Psychedelic Rock, it was also the hub of many other artistic endeavors, including painting, poetry, performance art, and hip literature of all kinds. The San Francisco Oracle, true to its name, was the publication that spread the word of change throughout the hip community. From its cover art to the final page, each issue represented the many facets of a burgeoning new counterculture. Alan Cohen was one of the founders and editors of The Oracle, and he joins us now. You take it from here, Alan.
Let's end. By taking this Let's enter a time machine and journey to a distant.
This is the reference section. You can look up things by topic, you can check out the Oracle pages, you can play the music videos and interviews, and you can create your own custom playlist of the Turn On show. And if you need help, you can click the help button down there. To tune in, just click on me.
The height of the American Empire, where we had, for all intents and purposes, all the bombs, all the cops in the world. It was all ours. We had the 2 Cadillacs, the 2-car garages, the split-level ranch houses. We were number one, and there was no competition. At that particular moment, pushing that lifestyle of the status seekers, of the upward mobility, of what today are called yuppies. Style conscious, anxious, desperate to always be at the head of fashion. Well, enough people looked at that and said, you know, they threw up. This is boring, this is spiritually unrewarding, it's unjust for all the other people that can't participate in, and yeah, we don't want any of it. There must be something else. If there isn't anything else, we'll take death. Death's better than this vision. So, slowly, people started to question authority, to be outraged about racism, to pay attention to other things.
In late 1965, Bill Graham produced an appeal party for